What I would like to say is, of course, that Scotland is different from the rest of the UK. And the GTC in Scotland is, as many of you have heard me say before, an independent body that sets the standards for teachers in Scotland. We also had, about 4 years ago, a review of teacher education in Scotland led by Graham Donaldson, who had recently retired as the Senior Inspector of Schools in Scotland. And one of the things that Graham said in his report, called Teaching Scotland's Future, was that the standards should be an overarching framework and that they should be really very, very well integrated. So 2 years ago in April, the GTC changed its status and became an independent body, and we set about reviewing all of the standards at that particular point. And one of the things that we were keen to do was to make sure that the review was genuinely inclusive, that we included as many different stakeholders, actors as we possibly could. So we had a steering group, and on that steering group we had everybody. All the different areas of Scottish education were represented, from the government to the inspectorate, to the universities, to the teacher unions, to parents. The Scottish Youth Parliament came and joined in the group. So we had a really inclusive steering group, and it did what it was supposed to do. It steered. We then had 3 small working groups led by colleagues of mine. They looked at standards for the beginning of a teacher's career. They looked at standards for accomplished teaching for further on in the career, and they looked at standards for leadership and management as well. And these 3 groups worked really, really well, worked very hard over a number of meetings and produced draft materials which we then put out for consultation. And we had a very lengthy consultation process. We took about 9 months to do this. We had face-to-face meetings across the country. We had an online survey. We made use of an intranet, an educational intranet we've got in Scotland for TV consultations, so that people from the remoter parts of Scotland, from the Western Islands, the Northern Isles, were able to take part in the consultation. We used social media like Twitter. And that's an interesting exercise, because you tend to have people who want to have their say and sometimes aren't afraid to say things. So I was accused of creating yet another stick to beat teachers over the head with, which wasn't quite the rationale behind redoing the standards. We then had the GTC Education Committee consider this. Absolutely, the council, I'm an officer of the council, but the council members considered it, and ultimately the whole council signed off on this. Now, the relevance of what I'm talking about is the parallel with the work that's been going on in this project. Because through all of the consultation we did, through all of the working groups that we ran, there were a couple of things that came out really, really strongly. That desire for equity and learning in education. And one of the values that's in the Scottish standards, in all of them, is a commitment to social justice. The other link to the EPNoSL work is the notion of leadership being seeded and developed throughout an entire career. So in all of our standards, you will find information about leadership, from the seeds in the very early standards to the kind of flowering in the standards for leadership and management. So it is there, quite deliberately trying to do that. Now, what have we done with those standards since they were approved just over a year ago, a year and a half ago now, I suppose? We've developed further support materials, we've continued to give talks, we've continued to put things in our magazine. We've got a magazine that goes out to every single teacher in Scotland. And we've also been developing something called Professional Update. The Professional Update is a re-accreditation system for teachers to make sure that the registration is kept up to date, to make sure they're maintaining the appropriate standards they should be maintaining. So the standards have become much more central and significant to them. We've had standards since the end of the last century. And I have lots of statistics here, but I'll give you 2 just to show you how things have changed in the last year. In 2013, in a survey we did of teachers who were involved in the pilot for Professional Update, 58% of them said that they were engaging to some or to a large extent with the standards. So just over 50% of them, 58%. When we did that survey again this year, it came in at 70%. So we're going in the right direction. I'm not suggesting we've got everything sussed I'm not suggesting this is a panacea, but we certainly are going in the right direction. And it is interesting to hear a speaker from America earlier on, because there are clearly lots of other examples beyond Europe. There's a body in Australia called the Australian Institute for Teaching and School Leadership, ATISL. Is that right? Whatever it is, the Australian Institute anyway, which is doing really good things with standards in Australia. And a recently published statistic by them was that 61% of their teachers were talking about the standards having some kind of meaningful impact on what they're doing. So we think we're doing okay against somebody that we'd be very, very pleased to benchmark ourselves against. I'm not sure that is 10 minutes, but that's me finished.